The music doesn't stop, it dies. You can hear the last violin string quiver in the silence as every head turns toward the glass doors at the back of the ballroom. Even the chandeliers seem to hold their breath. Outside, beyond the swirl of white flowers and champagne light, a black Rolls-Royce eases to a stop. Its mirror-finished body throws gold reflections across the marble floor, right over the bride's gown. The groom blinks, confused, as the bride's hand stiffens around his. Her smile falters, 1 second too late to hide it. Who's that? Someone whispers. The priest clears his throat, unsure whether to continue. The driver steps out first, crisp suit, white gloves, and opens the back door like he's revealing a secret. From inside, a man in a tailored charcoal jacket swings one polished shoe onto the curb. Slow, deliberate. The kind of entrance that doesn't need applause. It steals it. The bride's mother gasps softly. The groom frowns, and you, standing there somewhere among the crowd, feel the entire room lean forward, united by curiosity and unease. The man steps into the light, and the bride's face drains of color. "Daniel," she breathes. Barely a sound. But everyone hears. The name ripples through the air like an electric current. Even the string quartet, unsure what else to do, freezes mid-note. He doesn't smile, doesn't wave, just stands there, eyes calm, as if he's been here before, watching the same woman in white, hearing the same music, only now the tune has changed. "Do you know him?" The groom whispers, trying to keep the microphone away from his mouth, but her silence answers everything. 2 hours earlier. Before the vows, before the silence, the ballroom had been noise, a blur of laughter and glasses clinking against ego. The bride, Serena Langford, stood at the center of it all, draped in satin and satisfaction. Every inch of her sparkled, from the diamond tiara to the glass of imported champagne she lifted like a trophy. "To my new beginning," she said, voice bright and a little cruel, "and to leaving the past where it belongs and behind me." Laughter followed, polite and mean. Her bridesmaid smirked. The groom, Scott, joined the laughter even though he didn't understand it. One of the guests asked, too loudly, "Who's the past?" Serena shrugged, eyes glittering with mischief. "Just an old mistake I once mistook for a man. He thought dreams were enough to live on." "Maybe he was right," her friend giggled. "No," Serena said softly. "If dreams paid rent, he wouldn't still be—" She stopped herself as if remembering the cameras. But her smile finished the sentence. The DJ switched tracks, but the moment lingered like perfume, sweet and sharp. Nobody noticed the hotel manager standing at the edge of the room, talking quietly into a headset, or the unfamiliar logo on the corner of the event banner, Langford Haven Holdings. A last-minute change, Serena had said. A new sponsor, Scott had assumed. Nobody asked more. Now, 2 hours later, that same logo glows above the ballroom doors. The Rolls-Royce engine hums to a stop, and the man they called broke, forgotten, the old mistake, stands framed in the doorway, haloed by sunlight and quiet vengeance. Serena tries to move, but her gown feels heavier. The weight isn't from the fabric. It's from memory. She remembers him standing outside her apartment years ago, coat soaked, hands empty. He'd said he'd make something of himself. She'd laughed. "Dreams don't buy diamonds, Daniel." Now, here he is, under chandeliers worth less than his car, and every word she'd ever thrown at him comes back like glass underfoot. The guests whisper. Some recognize the name, Daniel Reed, the startup guy who vanished after his company collapsed. Others just see the man's composure and wonder who let him in. Serena forces a smile, trembling. "He's nobody," she says too quickly. "Probably just lost." But Daniel finally moves, one step forward. His eyes stay locked on hers. Not angry. Not smug. Just steady. "You have the wrong address," she says, voice cracking under the microphone's echo. He tilts his head slightly. "No," he says. "I own it!" The crowd gasps, a collective intake of disbelief and delight. The priest lowers his book. The groom turns, blinking, as if waiting for someone to say it's a prank, but Daniel's face doesn't flinch. He looks around the ballroom, at the golden arches, the engraved initials on the napkins, the stage where the couple stood. Every detail, paid for and named after her new life. Then his gaze lands on the Rolls-Royce keys dangling from his fingers. He closes his hand slowly. "You left me for better," he says quietly, "and you found it. I'm just here to return the favor. No one knows what he means. Not yet." But when he slips something small into the hotel manager's hand, an envelope with a gold seal, the entire wedding seems to exhale. The manager nods once. The band looks confused. Serena's mother clutches her pearls, and Daniel turns, walking back toward the doors without looking back. You can feel it in the air, the unspoken question trembling between every heartbeat. What was in that envelope? You can't hear the music anymore. Only the murmur of gossip rising like wind after a storm. The envelope's gone, but its presence still buzzes in the air. People pretend to sip champagne, pretending not to look at the bride whose jaw is locked and whose perfect smile is trembling like a held note. "Maybe he's staff," one aunt whispers. "Staff don't arrive in Rolls-Royces," another snaps back. The groom, Scott, forces a laugh. "Must be some misunderstanding." "Babe, you know him?" Serena's voice sounds different now, thin, not the polished crystal tone from an hour ago. "No," she says quickly, then softer. "Not really. But everyone's already heard the name. Daniel Reed." The priest clears his throat again. "Shall we continue?" But no one moves. Even the candles flicker uncertainly, as though the air has changed flavor. The ceremony's warmth has evaporated, replaced by the metallic scent of tension. And then, like a record skipping back, you rewind 2 hours earlier to the exact moment she'd set this whole spectacle aflame. It started during the bridal brunch, a carefully curated affair that looked more like a magazine shoot than a meal. The table shimmered with white orchids and gold-trimmed menus, each embossed with Serena and Scott. A new chapter. Her. Bridesmaids were mid-laughter when the conversation turned toward old flames. Someone joked about dodging broke dreams, and Serena had lifted her mimosa, like it was her sword. "I guess some people just never grow up," she'd said, eyes on her reflection in the glass, not on her friends. "I used to date a guy who thought owning a laptop made him an entrepreneur." "Oh my God, the one with the app idea?" Her cousin chortled. Serena smiled, relishing the attention. "Daniel, sweet but hopeless. He was all plans, no paycheck. Wanted to build a logistics startup, connect small businesses to customers or whatever. I told him to start by connecting himself to a job." They laughed. Even the videographer caught a clip, zooming in as she raised her glass and said, "Here's to upgrades. Some of us don't settle for promises. We marry progress." What the camera didn't catch was her glance at her phone. An unread message buried under wedding notifications. From Daniel Reed, sent 2 weeks ago. Just 3 words. "Congratulations, Serena." Truly, she'd never replied. Back in the ballroom, that unread message feels like it's echoing in her skull. "Congratulations." Truly. Scott is whispering with the priest now, trying to salvage the ceremony. Guests fidget. Phones raised just enough to record, but not enough to get caught. Serena can see the red light of a lens blinking somewhere in the crowd. "Can we just move on?" she says through her teeth. Ignore him. But Daniel's words, "I own it," still hang in the air like perfume you can't wash off. The hotel manager returns, pale but composed, and quietly speaks to Scott. His voice is calm but firm. "Sir, we may need a brief pause. There's been a transfer." "A what?" Scott frowns. The manager glances at the envelope in his hand. "It concerns the venue's ownership. We're confirming details now." Serena's skin goes cold. No, that's ridiculous. But even as she says it, her mind flicks back to one memory she'd buried deep. Daniel sitting on her couch, sleeves rolled up, showing her sketches for his company. Haven Link Logistics. The name she'd mocked for sounding too sentimental. And the logo, that simple, interlocking H and L. She sees it now, Embossed on every napkin in the ballroom, Langford Haven Holdings. Her knees weaken. She grips Scott's arm, nails pressing through his suit. "Babe, what is this?" He whispers. I don't know, but she does. Somewhere inside, she does. Outside, the Rolls-Royce still gleams beneath the afternoon sun. The crowd at the entrance has doubled, hotel staff whispering, photographers circling like bees. And Daniel stands by the car, leaning against it, talking quietly to a woman in a cream blazer. She's holding a clipboard, the kind used for property transfers. The camera pans back inside to Serena, whose voice has lost its sugar. "Someone fix this," she snaps at the planner. "He's trying to ruin my wedding." "Ma'am," the planner says carefully, "we just received confirmation that the hotel ownership changed hands this morning. The new proprietor—" She stops mid-sentence, realizing too late. Serena whispers, "Don't say it," but it's already obvious. The whispers spread like smoke through silk. Daniel Reed bought the hotel. Every story has a heartbeat, and right now, this one skips. Daniel doesn't re-enter the ballroom. He just waits outside, calm, while chaos blooms behind glass. And that somehow is worse. He's not gloating. He's letting silence speak. Inside, Scott fumbles through excuses, promising the guests everything's fine. But his hand shakes as he tries to pour more champagne. Someone mutters, "Guess the broke boy learned a thing or two." Another replies, "Guess she taught him what not to be." The laughter now feels nervous, like people trying to stay warm near a flame that's about to burn higher. Serena looks toward the window. For a moment, their eyes meet again, hers full of disbelief, his unreadable. Then something subtle. He taps his watch once, as if reminding her of time. Or timing. You can feel it. The story isn't over. Not even close, because somewhere deep inside you suspect this wasn't revenge. It was choreography, and whatever's inside that sealed envelope is only the first step. It wasn't the first time she'd seen that look, calm, unreadable, almost tender in its restraint. But back then, when Daniel Reed had nothing, Serena mistook composure for weakness. You remember that last night between them like it's unfolding right now. Rain lashed the cracked window of his apartment, a one-bedroom space that smelled faintly of paint and coffee. Serena stood in the doorway wearing a trench coat too expensive for the room she was in. He was packing boxes, one labeled ideas, another invoices unpaid. "So this is it?" she'd asked, her tone sharp to mask the tremor beneath. "You're really choosing to waste your 20s chasing another startup fantasy?" Daniel didn't stop taping the box shut. "I'm choosing to build something that lasts." "Dreams again," she scoffed. "You can't feed a future on optimism, Daniel. The world doesn't pay you for believing in yourself." He looked up then, tired but steady. "No," he said softly, "but it punishes you for not trying." That line stayed with her, though she pretended it hadn't. She'd rolled her eyes, muttered something about poetry doesn't pay rent, and left him with the echo of her heels and the ghost of what could have been. She never came back. 2 months later, she'd met Scott at a gala. He had a trust fund, a tailored laugh, and a plan that didn't require patience. Serena liked that. Stability disguised itself as love easily. Within a year, she'd swapped ramen dinners for rooftop brunches and traded Daniel's stubborn hope for Scott's easy wealth. She told herself she'd outgrown Daniel, that he'd end up like the others, clever, kind, and eventually crushed by their own idealism. Every time she thought of his face, she remembered that tiny apartment, the flickering bulb, the smell of wet cardboard, symbols of failure she never wanted to feel again. But what she didn't know was that Daniel hadn't stayed in that apartment for long. The next morning after their breakup, Daniel sold nearly everything he owned, his guitar, his watch, even the vintage camera Serena had given him. He bought a bus ticket to Detroit, where a small logistics startup had offered him a partnership in exchange for sweat, not cash. He worked 16-hour days in a converted warehouse that leaked when it rained. When the company folded, he didn't complain. He bought the leftover software code for pennies and started rebuilding it alone, teaching himself finance from YouTube tutorials and contracts from online templates. He'd failed twice more before something clicked. One night, while hauling crates for a side gig, he noticed how local businesses struggled to deliver goods beyond city limits, how national couriers ignored them, and smaller drivers lacked visibility. He began coding between deliveries, his laptop balanced on a stack of boxes, powered by the warehouse's only working outlet. That idea became Haven Link Logistics, a digital network that connected small-town manufacturers with independent truckers. Within a year, local investors noticed. Within 3, national chains joined. By the 5th year, Haven Link was one of the fastest-growing supply chain platforms in the Midwest. And Daniel, he never posted about it, never bragged. He let his work whisper for him. Back in the present, the whispers in the ballroom have become a storm. Serena retreats to a corner, pretending to fix her makeup. Her reflection betrays her, the shimmer of tears threatening to undo waterproof mascara. Scott is pacing, muttering about bad PR. Her mother hovers nearby, repeating, "Keep smiling." Cameras are still rolling, but Serena can't unhear his voice, calm, unwavering. In that rain-soaked apartment, the world punishes you for not trying. Now, it's punishing her for underestimating him. The planner approaches timidly. "Ma'am, the new owner, Mr. Reed, he's requesting a brief word in the private lounge." Serena stiffens. "Tell him no," Scott frowns. "Wait, maybe it's better we handle it privately." "We can settle this. There's nothing to settle," she snaps. "He's trying to humiliate me." But even as she says it, a flicker of guilt ripples through her chest. Because deep down she knows Daniel was never cruel, not even when she was. He had loved her quietly, without conditions. And maybe that's what scared her most. You follow her now as she storms into the lounge, the satin of her dress brushing the marble like waves hitting shore. Daniel is waiting by the window, the skyline reflected in his eyes. He turns, and the silence between them feels heavier than any insult. "You've made your point," she says, voice trembling between anger and fear. "Is that what you came for? To ruin me?" He looks almost surprised. "Ruin you? Serena, this is your day. Don't play noble," she spits. "Buying the venue, showing up like that? What do you want, an apology?" He studies her for a moment before speaking. "No," he says quietly. "Just clarity," she laughs bitterly. "Clarity?" Daniel reaches into his pocket and takes out another envelope. Smaller, cream-colored, sealed with the same gold crest as the first. He sets it on the table between them. "This was supposed to be mailed yesterday," he says. "But since fate decided otherwise..." Serena hesitates. "What is it?" He gives a faint smile. "Something that belongs to you." She opens it and freezes. Inside is a check. A wedding gift. The amount? Not obscene, but enough to sting. $50,000, her voice cracks. "You think you can buy..." "It's the investment you turned down," he interrupts gently. 5 years ago, the night you said my idea would never work." She stares, speechless. "I promised myself that if I ever made it," he continues, "I'd return the same offer." No bitterness, just balance. Serena can't move. The check trembles in her hand like something alive. He steps past her, heading for the door. "Congratulations, Serena. Truly." The same words from his unread message. When he leaves, she finally sits, alone, surrounded by gold and glass, her reflection fractured in the mirrored wall. Outside, guests whisper and the Rolls-Royce idles like a living thing waiting for its cue. And somewhere deep inside, she knows the story isn't done. Because Daniel Reed doesn't make grand entrances without an endgame. And this time, he's playing with silence as his sharpest weapon. People still argue whether that moment, her sitting there, clutching the check, was when she began to change, or when she began to crumble. You can almost feel the city shift around him as he walks out of that hotel lounge. The hum of cars, the sting of flashbulbs, the way sunlight hits the chrome of the Rolls-Royce like applause withheld. Daniel doesn't look back. He never does, but somewhere behind those calm eyes, 1,000 nights replay like old film reels. The long road between being laughed at and being respected, 5 years earlier. It began with a borrowed laptop, a chipped coffee mug, and a dream too fragile to speak aloud. Detroit's skyline looked like opportunity and decay tangled together, perfect for a man trying to rebuild from both. Daniel had rented a windowless workspace above a tire shop, its sign flickering open even when it wasn't. He'd named it Haven Link after something his mother once said before she passed. Be the safe place people can count on. He wasn't chasing wealth. He was chasing purpose. But purpose didn't pay bills. He took on odd jobs. Warehouse loader by dawn, delivery driver by day, coder by night. Some weeks his only meal was gas station coffee and a stale sandwich, but he never missed a deadline. Every setback became code. Every rejection became strategy. One night, his friend Malik, a mechanic who ran deliveries part-time, found him slumped over his keyboard. "Bro, when's the last time you slept?" Daniel smiled weakly. "When's the last time you quit?" Malik laughed. "Never. Guess we both stupid then. That was the kind of loyalty you don't buy. The kind you build." When Haven Link's first prototype crashed during a live demo, investors laughed. One even said, "You look like you borrowed that suit." Daniel just nodded and fixed the bug overnight. By morning, the same investor called him back. Curiosity disguised as interest. "People still argue whether success favors the lucky or the relentless," Malik would later say. "But watching him code through hunger, I stopped believing in luck." There were nights Daniel slept on his office floor, using boxes as pillows. The radiator rattled, the lights buzzed, and the sound of passing trains shook dust from the ceiling. But he loved it. Every vibration reminded him he was moving, forward somehow. Then came the call that changed everything. A regional shipping company needed a digital solution for same-day route optimization. They offered him a trial. 1 week turned into 3 months. 3 months turned into a contract. By the second year, Havenlink wasn't just surviving, it was scaling. Daniel reinvested everything: new servers, better staff, fair pay. He never took shortcuts, never forgot what it felt like to be unseen. When media finally noticed him, a journalist asked, "What drives you the most, money or proving people wrong?" He smiled, almost shy. "Neither. I just like watching small people do big things." That quote went viral, not because it was flashy, but because it felt real. Back at the wedding, word of that same quote spreads like wildfire. Someone pulls up an article on their phone, whispering, "Isn't that him? The Havenlink guy." The guests who had once pitied Serena's broke ex now exchange looks, embarrassment hidden behind sips of champagne. Even the photographer lowers his camera, unsure which story he's capturing anymore. Serena returns to the ballroom at last, eyes puffy but makeup reapplied. The facade is cracking but not collapsed. Not yet. She's mastered that art. Scott rushes over. "Where the hell did you go? People are talking." She exhales, steadying herself. "It's handled." "Handled how?" Her pause answers everything. Scott's face shifts, suspicion, then disbelief. "You're telling me your ex owns this place?" She doesn't reply. She doesn't have to. Meanwhile, in the parking lot, Daniel leans against the Rolls-Royce, phone to his ear. "Yeah," he says softly, "everything's on schedule. Transfer cleared. Let them finish the ceremony. They've earned their spotlight." A pause. Then a quiet laugh. "No, don't cancel the driver. I'll be taking the long way back." He hangs up, pocketing his phone as Malik appears beside him. Same friend, now wearing a tailored jacket instead of grease-stained coveralls. "You sure you want to do this?" Malik asks. "Showing up like a ghost from her past?" "Kinda poetic, man, but also rough," Daniel smirks faintly. "You think I came to embarrass her?" "I think you came for closure," Malik says. "But closure's tricky. Sometimes it bites back." Daniel's gaze drifts toward the hotel windows, where silhouettes move behind curtains of light. "I didn't come to gloat," he says. "I came to make peace with the version of me she left behind." Inside, Serena's trying to keep her world from spinning. She watches the guests laugh nervously, the flowers droop under heat, the clock tick past the hour when she should have been dancing. But the DJ hasn't played a note since Daniel walked in. Her mother approaches, whispering sharply, "We can't afford gossip, Serena. Smile. Finish the vows." "You'll deal with him later," Serena nods mechanically. "Right. Finish the vows." She turns toward Scott, rehearsed grin glued back in place. "Let's start over," she says brightly. From the top. But as the music restarts and the priest reopens the book, her voice catches. For a heartbeat, she sees Daniel's reflection in the glass door, calm, unbothered, watching from afar. The Rolls-Royce behind him gleams like a mirror, and for the first time, she wonders what she looks like through his eyes. A girl who traded love for security, and still ended up shaken. Later, people will say that was the moment her armor cracked, not from shame, but realization. Because Daniel didn't destroy her world. He simply built his without her, and that truth, quiet, elegant, irreversible, hurt far more than revenge ever could. The floodlights burn your eyes. Security guards shout orders that echo down the hall like thunder, boots splashing through puddles as they close in. Your father raises his hands, voice steady. You're making a mistake. But they don't hear him, or don't want to. Two guards rush forward, one grabbing the red folder from your grip. You clutch it tighter, your voice cracking, "That's mine!" It's chaos. Evelyn shouts something you can't make out. One guard shoves your father against the wall too hard. He stumbles, coughing, and for a split second you see fear in his eyes. Not for himself. For you, then a sharp command slices through the noise. "Stand down!" The guards freeze. From the far end of the corridor, a man in a gray tailored suit strides toward you, his shoes splashing through the water with slow, deliberate steps. His face is familiar, cold, symmetrical. Carved for the front page, Robert Hensley, CEO, heir, the man who fired you for not fitting in. He stops a few feet away, his gaze sliding from you to your father. "Henry, I should have known the janitor would crawl out of the woodwork eventually." Your father glares back. "Still practicing that family charm, I see," Robert smirks. "You've trespassed on company property. That file belongs to us." You lift the folder, hands trembling but firm. This belongs to me." His smile fades. "Do you even know what's in it?" You hesitate, a beat too long. His smirk returns. "Didn't think so." Then he gestures, and one of the guards snatches it from you. You lunge forward, but Robert holds up a hand. Wouldn't want Daddy to get hurt again, would we?" Your father's voice breaks through the tension. "She's your sister, Robert." The silence that follows is sharp enough to cut air. Even Evelyn looks stunned. "You never told him?" She whispers. Robert laughs, a hollow, disbelieving sound. "You expect me to buy that fairy tale?" Henry steps forward. "You can run all the DNA tests you want. The truth's already in your system. She's Margaret's daughter, your half-sister." Robert's jaw tightens. "Margaret Hensley died 30 years ago." "Yeah," Henry says quietly. "Right after you were born." Evelyn looks between them, her voice trembling. "Robert, there were files, hospital records. I was there. She had another baby before you. For a moment, the great Robert Hensley, the man who controls a $500 million empire, looks like a boy who's just been told the monster under his bed was real all along." He forces a laugh. "This is insane!" "You're all fired. Arrested even." Henry doesn't move. "Do that, and the press gets this file. Every page, every forged signature, including your father's confession." Robert's eyes flick to the folder. His confidence wavers. You step closer. "You fired me because I didn't fit in. Because I was the janitor's daughter." You never imagined the janitor was the man who raised your sister. His smirk is gone now. You continue, voice low but strong. "You didn't just fire me. You erased me. But blood doesn't vanish, Robert. It stains." Behind him, one of the guards whispers, "Sir, maybe we should call legal." Robert doesn't answer. His eyes dart between you, your father, and Evelyn. The three ghosts of a secret he didn't bury deep enough. Then his phone buzzes. He glances down. The color drains from his face. He turns the screen toward you. A live feed from the company's internal server. Someone's uploaded a confidential file titled Hensley DNA Official Results. The progress bar reads 98%, 99%, 100%. The document opens. Your name flashes on screen. Match 99.9997%. Confirmed biological relation to Margaret Hensley. A collective gasp ripples through the hall. Even the guards look shaken. You stare at Robert, who's gone silent, his empire crumbling in real time. Your father lets out a ragged breath. Looks like the mop finally cleaned house. Evelyn steps forward, her voice trembling but resolute. The board will see that file before morning. You can't stop it now. Robert turns slowly toward her. You did this. She shakes her head. No, she did. All eyes turn to you. The rain has slowed outside, the thunder fading, but inside, the tension hangs thicker than ever. You look at your father, then back at Robert. Tell the truth, or I will. He says nothing, but the silence says enough. Then your father takes your hand. Come on, baby. We're done here. You walk past Robert, past the guards who suddenly can't meet your eyes, and out into the night, where the rain has softened into mist. Behind you, through the open doorway, the Hensley plaque still glows faintly in the emergency light. The same inscription you saw before, in memory of Margaret Hensley, whose daughter will inherit her legacy. This time you don't look away, because now the world knows who that daughter is. The violins swell, the chandeliers hum, and every head turns toward the aisle. Serena stands, framed by white roses and candlelight, her diamond veil catching soft beams of gold. The air smells of lilies and wealth, curated perfection. Then, the doors at the back open. It's not part of the program. The string quartet hesitates mid-note. The wedding planner's eyes widen. A whisper ripples through the crowd like a sudden wind. Daniel steps inside. You can almost hear the air leave Serena's chest. Her bouquet dips slightly, hands trembling just enough to wrinkle the satin ribbon. He doesn't look angry. He doesn't look proud. He looks composed, as if he's attending a board meeting instead of walking into the wedding of the woman who once laughed at his dreams. The Rolls-Royce key fob glints between his fingers, a careless detail that burns brighter than the chandelier. Scott notices the shift in the crowd first. Who's that guy? He mutters, squinting. Serena forces a smile. No one important. But the whisper grows louder, spreading pew by pew. That's Daniel from Haven Link. You mean the fintech guy? He's worth millions. A guest near the aisle leans toward another. Didn't she date him in college? Serena's father, seated near the front, leans toward his wife. That's the Daniel Brooks? His wife nods faintly, lips tight. Yes, the one she left because he had no future. And just like that, the silence becomes a mirror. Everyone sees their reflection in it. The violinists try to resume the melody, but the notes wobble, uncertain. Daniel doesn't rush. Each step echoes, soft, deliberate. He pauses near the last row, hands clasped, not intruding, but impossible to ignore. His eyes meet Serena's, a flicker of something unsaid passing between them. It's not vengeance. It's recognition. Sir, the wedding planner whispers nervously, rushing to him. I'm sorry, but this is a private... Daniel smiles politely. I'm aware. I'm a guest. The planner blinks. I don't... He gestures lightly toward the table near the entrance, the one stacked with invitation cards. His lies there, perfectly legitimate. Someone gasps. He was invited? Indeed he was. Serena hadn't realized. The hotel's guest list was compiled by her event coordinator using the property's internal database. When the venue was booked under Haven Link Hospitality Group, the system automatically listed its executives as VIP attendees. In short, fate's finest joke. Scott's smirk falters. Why's everyone looking at him? He asks under his breath. Serena's voice trembles. Because they know him. Scott laughs, forced. Relax, you chose right, remember? He's just trying to make a scene. But Daniel doesn't speak. He takes a seat quietly in the second row, just behind Serena's old college friends, the same ones who once teased her about dating ambition, not men. One of them, Kendra, glances back and mouths, "Is that really him?" Daniel gives a courteous nod, nothing more. The ceremony continues, but the rhythm is broken. The priest's voice trembles slightly. Even the candles seem to flicker off-beat. When Serena repeats her vows, the words taste different, hollow echoes of things she once said to Daniel. "I promise to support you in all your dreams." He almost smiles. Almost. Midway through, as the priest says, "If anyone has reason why these two should not be joined..." Someone coughs in the back. Every head turns instinctively. It's just an elderly guest, but the tension is electric. Scott shoots a glare toward Daniel, expecting him to stand, to ruin everything. He doesn't. Instead, he folds his hands, gaze steady, as if silently blessing them to finish what they started. That calm, that restraint, unnerves Scott more than any outburst could. When the ceremony ends, applause breaks out, thin, uneven. Outside, the Rolls gleams in the sunlight, drawing curious stares. "Whose car is that?" Someone asks. "The groom's?" Another suggests. But as Scott and Serena step out hand in hand, the valet hurries forward, eyes wide. "Sir, your car is ready." Scott frowns. "Mine." The valet shakes his head, turning toward Daniel. "Mr. Brooks, your Rolls-Royce is ready for departure." The crowd freezes. The photographer lowers his camera slowly. Serena's bouquet slips from her hand, petals scattering like confetti over marble. Scott forces a laugh. "You rented that, right? Trying to show off?" Daniel finally turns, meeting his gaze. "No, Mr. Delaney, it's part of my fleet." "You've stayed at my hotels before, under your company's expense account." Murmurs ripple again. A groomsman whispers, "Wait, his hotels?" Serena's father clears his throat, voice barely audible. "Haven Link owns the Grand Hamilton chain." Serena blinks rapidly, trying to process the words. Your company," Daniel tilts his head slightly. "Manages this venue, yes." For a second, no one breathes. Scott's confidence cracks. That's impossible." Daniel gives a small shrug. "Believe what you like. Congratulations, by the way. You have quite the crowd." Then, with a polite nod, he walks past them, opens the rolls himself, and slides in with unhurried grace. The engine roars softly, restrained power, elegance, control. Serena watches through the reflection of her own veil as the man she mocked for being broke drives away from her. Wedding and in the car, she once said, they'd share one day, and the strangest thing isn't that he came. It's that he left without saying a single cruel word. People still argue whether it was revenge or closure. That moment when Daniel Brooks drove off while the applause still lingered in the air. Some say he wanted her to see what she lost. Others think he just wanted to remind himself how far he'd come. Only Daniel knows the truth, and he kept it locked behind that calm, unreadable smile as the Rolls disappeared down the sunlit boulevard. But that wasn't the end. Not even close, because the real twist was still waiting at the reception. You can almost hear the gossip before you see the guests. The reception hall hums with polite chaos, laughter that hides tension, champagne glasses clinking too hard, whispers folding into the music. "Did you see his car?" "I heard he's worth 8 figures. 8? Try 9. My husband invests in his fund." Every table is a rumor mill now, and at the center of it, the bride sits frozen, her perfect smile stretched thin like porcelain about to crack. Serena doesn't eat. She doesn't even blink when Scott raises his glass for their first toast. Her mind is still outside, watching that Rolls-Royce drive away in slow motion. "Babe," Scott murmurs through his teeth. "Snap out of it." Serena forces a laugh, just enough to fool the nearest guests. "Of course I'm fine." But she isn't. Because every detail she planned, every flower, every glass, every sparkle, suddenly feels cheap under the weight of what she just saw. Her mother leans in. "Darling, are you sure you're okay?" Serena swallows hard. I just didn't expect him. Her father's eyes tighten. You made your choice. Don't start second-guessing it now. Serena nods, but her hand trembles as she sets down the champagne flute. At the far end of the ballroom, the event manager approaches the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, before we continue with dinner, a quick acknowledgement from one of our venue partners. The crowd quiets, and there he is again. Daniel walks in through the side door. No fanfare this time, just that quiet, unhurried composure. The band stumbles mid-song. Forks pause halfway to lips. He nods to the manager and steps forward to the mic. Serena grips the tablecloth. No, he wouldn't. Scott's jaw tightens. What the hell is he doing? Good evening, everyone, Daniel begins, voice steady, warm. I won't take much of your time. I just wanted to thank the Delaney's and Hamiltons for hosting such a beautiful event at the Grand Hamilton, one of Haven Link's flagship hotels. The guests exchange looks, polite smiles, then dawning realization. Serena stares up at him. The way you look at a ghost that still remembers your name, Daniel continues, tone humble yet impossible to ignore. This property holds a special place for us. When we acquired it 2 years ago, it was struggling. Our team rebuilt it from the ground up. Structure, staff, spirit. Today, it stands as one of the most successful luxury venues in the city. Proof that even when something seems beyond repair, it can still be restored. He lets that sentence linger. Not sharp, but deep. A single metaphor that slices through every layer of champagne and vanity. Scott mutters, "He's grandstanding." Serena doesn't respond. Her eyes are fixed on Daniel, on the calm power in his voice, on how every word carries weight without effort. The crowd applauds politely. Daniel steps away from the microphone and moves toward the exit, exchanging a few firm handshakes. As he passes Serena's table, he stops. Just for a second. Serena, he says softly, almost kind. You look happy. Congratulations. Her throat tightens. Daniel, But he's already turned away. When he's gone, the silence he leaves behind is heavier than any speech could be. Scott leans close, irritation flaring. You gonna tell me what that was? Because everyone's looking at you now. Serena forces a brittle smile. He owns this hotel, Scott. Of course He didn't own it when you dumped him, did he? Scott's voice cuts sharper than he intends. A few guests glance their way. Serena straightens, masking the sting. Please, not here. Later, when the first dance begins, Serena slips away. The music fades behind her, replaced by the muffled buzz of city traffic beyond the terrace doors. Outside, the night is quiet, the kind of silence that begs for answers. She leans on the marble railing, trying to steady her breath, and that's when she hears it, the low hum of an engine. Familiar and distant, the Rolls-Royce again, parked just across the street. Daniel stands beside it, talking to an elderly woman in a blue dress, someone Serena doesn't recognize. But when the woman laughs, Serena feels something twist in her chest. That voice, that warmth, it's Daniel's mother. The woman she once promised to visit after graduation, back when everything was simpler. Daniel helps his mother into the car with quiet tenderness. He adjusts her seatbelt, kisses her hand, and closes the door gently. For a moment, Serena sees not the businessman, not the symbol of success, but the same man who used to fix her bicycle at sunset, who once saved every dollar just to buy her a birthday necklace. Her eyes blur. Daniel senses her watching but doesn't look up. He walks around the car, gets in, and drives away once more, headlights gliding across the marble floor like a curtain closing on a play she no longer stars in. Behind her, the wedding laughter returns, faint, distant. Someone calls her name, but she doesn't answer. In that moment, the realization hits. She didn't lose him when she left. She lost him when she stopped believing in him, and worse, when she stopped believing in herself. Inside, Scott jokes loudly with guests, pretending nothing happened. But the confidence he wore like armor is cracking. His investors whisper in corners. His bride's mind is miles away. The night goes on. Music, lights, wine. But the story everyone will remember isn't the marriage. It's the man who walked in, said nothing cruel, and left with all the dignity money can't buy. People still argue about that reception speech, whether Daniel planned it or if fate handed him the perfect stage. Some say he wanted closure. Some say he wanted her to see what patience looks like when time takes your side. But there was still one more twist no one saw coming. One Serena would discover not through gossip, but through her own tears a few days later. 3 days after the wedding, the headlines hit social media like thunder. Haven Link acquires Delaney Capital. Tech mogul Daniel Brooks expands portfolio, names new philanthropic director. At first, Serena thought it was a joke. The same company her husband bragged about merging with? Gone. Absorbed overnight. Her hands shook as she scrolled through the article, the words swimming under the morning light. There it was, in clean, bold text. Haven Link Holdings finalizes acquisition of Delaney Capital Management. CEO Daniel Brooks announces staff reorganization effective immediately. Below that, Serena Hamilton Delaney has been appointed as a consultant for the Haven Link Women's Initiative. Her blood ran cold. Consultant? She hadn't even applied. Scott! She called from the bedroom, voice rising. Come here now. Scott stumbled in, tie half nodded, holding his phone. I saw it. It's got to be some mix-up. Your company, the one you bragged about, he owns it now. Scott's jaw twitched. It's not ownership, it's just restructuring, temporary. Temporary? She hissed, waving the phone. It says he's the majority shareholder. Scott grabbed his coat, muttering. I'm going to the office. But Serena could see the truth written all over his face. The man who'd mocked Daniel's ambition was now his employee. By noon, it wasn't just gossip, it was chaos. Delaney Capital's offices buzzed with confusion. Executives whispered, HR reps packed boxes, and Daniel's team walked through the glass doors with quiet authority. When Daniel entered, the room stilled. Scott stood near his desk, eyes narrow, knuckles white around his coffee mug. You planned this, he snapped. You humiliated me at my own wedding. Daniel's voice was even. No, Scott, I was closing this deal long before your wedding date. Then why show up? Daniel's gaze didn't waver. To make sure you still knew my name when you signed your exit papers. The silence that followed could have cut steel. Scott's bravado cracked. You think you're better than me? Daniel's tone was measured, not cruel. No, I think I stopped needing to prove I wasn't. He turned toward the staff gathered by the door. Ladies and gentlemen, Haven Link appreciates your hard work. Some departments will merge. Others will evolve. But one thing won't change, and we build. We don't destroy. And with that, he walked out, leaving Scott frozen among the fragments of his pride. That evening, a courier delivered an envelope to Serena's new apartment. No return address, but she knew the handwriting instantly. Calm, deliberate, familiar. She opened it slowly. Inside was a single page. Serena, you once said I'd never make it because I dreamed too big. I used to think those words broke me. But looking back, they built me. You taught me something I didn't understand then. That belief has to outlast betrayal. This isn't revenge. I don't want an apology. I just wanted you to see that I kept my promise. Not to you, but to the boy you once believed in. I hope you find your peace. The same way I found mine. Serena pressed the paper to her chest, tears slipping down her cheeks before she could stop them. That night, she drove, nowhere in particular, just moving through the city's glowing veins, past the hotel where it all happened, past the neighborhoods they used to walk through with empty pockets and full hearts. She ended up in front of a small park, the one near their old college dorm. The swings creaked softly in the wind, the streetlights buzzing overhead. For a long time, she just sat there, replaying everything. The laughter, the ambition, the doubt. And then she whispered into the quiet, I'm sorry, it wasn't for Daniel. Not really. It was for the part of herself she'd buried the moment she chose comfort over conviction. Meanwhile, across town, Daniel stood on another balcony, the same spot where he'd once read her wedding invitation. The city pulsed below, alive and infinite. Malik joined him, handing over a glass. Delaney's out. The deal's clean, Daniel nodded. Good. You ever think she'll reach out? Daniel's smile was soft, almost wistful. If she does, I'll listen. But I won't look back. Malik raised his glass. To moving forward, Daniel clinked it gently. To believing, even when no one else does. Weeks later, Serena started her first day at Haven Link, not as a consultant by obligation, but by choice. Daniel's letter had included a quiet invitation. If you ever want to make a difference, there's room for you here. No fanfare, no cameras, no Rolls-Royce. Just purpose. She walked through the glass doors, humbled, uncertain, but determined to begin again. Daniel saw her from his office window and smiled faintly, then turned back to his work. No need for words, because sometimes the truest forgiveness doesn't happen between two people. It happens within the silence after everything is said and done. People still debate that final act, whether Daniel's acquisition was karma or coincidence. Some say it was poetic justice. Others call it divine timing. But those who knew him best say this: he didn't do it to win her back. He did it to prove that some dreams don't die. They just wait for the right moment to be recognized. The city lights flicker one last time. The Rolls-Royce gleams under the street lamp, its engine silent, resting, and somewhere in that stillness, two hearts finally make peace with the past, one through grace, the other through growth, because in the end, power didn't prove him right. Integrity did. If this story reminded you that success doesn't need revenge, it just needs patience, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell. Have you ever been underestimated because of where you started, only to rise higher than anyone expected? Tell us your story in the comments below. Your comeback might inspire our next viral tale of quiet strength and poetic justice. And here's a little challenge for the sharp-eyed viewers. There's a moment around minute 7:18. When Daniel closes the car door at the wedding, something subtle happens that reveals his real plan long before the takeover. Watch closely and tell us what you noticed. Only the most observant viewers will catch what he slips into his jacket right then. Because in this love story turned power play, every silence hides a strategy,